Want to see more cool videos on our channel? We do, so press this bell and enable to send notifications.
The Chernobyl nuclear power plant explosion will be remembered for many years. It shook the entire world on 26th of April 1986. It happened at the nuclear reactor number 4 at 1:23 a.m. Kiev time and ended up destroying the nuclear reactor completely. The Ukraine Nature Reserve was turned into a red zone for radioactive substances. Approximately 300,000 people left their homes to steer clear of the dangerous radiation hazard. The Chernobyl Exclusion Zone became off-limits to any visitor and created a division between the two administered territories. There were two clear perimeters, a 10-kilometer zone and a 30-kilometer zone. Legally, the first tour to the exclusion zone was organized in 1988, and in 2009 this radioactive area was named by Forbes Exotic Places for Tourism on Earth. The place receives over 70,000 people from 93 countries each year. Here are some of the 10 places which are awkward, eerie, as well as mesmerizing. For some of these places no man has ever set foot in, so they remain no man's land. Number 10. Lazuli Swimming Pool. This is an indoor swimming pool that's found in the ghost town of Pripyat on Naya Street. Getting around is a confusing maze, and you can't do without a guide. The street is now an impenetrable jungle. It's hard to really believe that the place, which is now run down and destroyed, was once a favourite place to relax, where the residents would come to the swimming pool. The swimming pool was well equipped and beautifully designed in 1970. It served the small population of 50,000 people well. Lazuli was special in the sense that it was in operation for 12 years after the nuclear reactor accident. Where it was located was believed to be the cleanest place in the exclusion zone, and some of the nuclear reactor workers would come round to work out and take a break. The swimming pool was closed after liquidation works were stopped at Chernobyl. The pool stands as a monument of tragedy and is now a legend that's been featured in a few films as well as computer games. Number 9. The Cooling Pond. This pond was set to cool the power units number 1 and number 2 and was constructed in 1976 on the right bank of the Pripyat River. The total area was 12.7 kilometers when the power units 3 and 4 were launched. The pond basin was then expanded by 22.9 square kilometers. This is the equivalent of 3,000 football fields. The pond was contaminated by many small fragments of the reactor and radioactive dust at the moment of the explosion. A decision was made in 2014 to lower the water levels in the attempt to clean it from the radioactive fragments. The loss of water made the cooling reservoir turn into several lakes, where there was a unique ecosystem on the bottom because of the radionuclides. The Research Lab Eco Center was opened near the fisheries, and scientists from all over the world come and conduct research on the effect of radioactivity on the flora and fauna. The cooling reservoir attracts a lot of tourists, especially those who want a chance to feed the giant catfish that has made the place its home. The size of the catfish is believed to be related to the radioactive elements in the environment. This is just a myth, since contaminated animals would die and never get a chance to produce offspring. Catfish have been able to get to big sizes since there's a ban on catching them, and the Eco Centre's favourite catfish is called Gosha and enjoys being stroked and fed by hand. One of the River Monsters episodes was shot in the exclusion zone in 2012 and had Jeremy Wade catch one of the catfish. Number 8. The Red Forest. No living person has a clue on how big the Chernobyl exclusion zone could have become were it not for the huge pine forest that blocked the way of radioactive dust. The pines blocked tens of thousands of deadly substances emitted into the air due to the fiery nuclear explosion. The high concentration of radiation colored the pines brownish red, hence the name the Red Forest. The liquidators at night saw the pines glow in the dark. The pines took in the radioactive flame and absorbed, turning 202 square kilometers of thick wood into radioactive waste burial ground. Given the very high levels of contamination, the Red Forest was chopped down and buried in the soil from 1986 to 1988. This assignment should have been performed by specialized engineer tanks as well as lead-coated bulldozers. The workers were clueless about the contamination hazard and cut down the trees by hand without any protective gear. 500 hectares of the affected land have already been restored, although every so often there are some serious fires. This place is still the most contaminated site. Number 7. The Duggar 1 Radiolocation Station. There's this one structure that towers over the military town of Chernobyl. The Duggar 1 Radiolocation Station can be seen from the horizon at any point of the exclusion zone. The metal structure is 150 meters high and 460 meters long, and despite this, the facility was not marked on a single map. It was a high-level secret place both in Chernobyl as well as the bigger Soviet Union. It started its work on July 4, 1976, and was not able to remain a mystery for much longer. It produced continuous radioactive interference the world over. It could even interfere with the running of a regular radio set and was given the name the Russian woodpecker. The making of a mega panel needed 280,000 tons of metal, and the total number of expenses came to 7 billion Soviets. There were many theories regarding the real use of the woodpecker. The Russian defense believed it to be an experimental weapon of the USSR and very big dimensions, and the 10 pulses that were transmitted per second scared people. Additionally, the powerful radio of missile launch detection systems was seen as a synchrotronic weapon or a manipulation of weather patterns. In present day, the place is a favorite for tourists as well as hunters. Hunters use the platforms for sightseeing and others use it for bungee jumps. Number 6. Radioactive Machines Graveyard. All manner of machines were used to resolve the consequences of the accident at Chernobyl NPP. The machines had been exposed to radioactive contamination and had to go through sanitary treatment all the time. There was a washing plant on the outskirts of the Rasaka village, and the 416 residents had been evacuated on May 7, 1986. After the end of the liquidation work, the site became a graveyard for over 1,350 pieces of radioactive equipment. This 50 acres of land had 10 heavy helicopters, Mi-8 to Mi-6 engineered tech, armoured personnel carriers, chemical reconnaissance vehicles, fire trucks and ambulance cars. Additionally, there were robotized bulldozers, excavators and evacuation buses awaiting their fate. The total value stored in the junkyard amounted to $46 million back in 1986. The Rasaka site was officially closed in 2012. The machinery that still had a large amount of radioactivity was transferred to another site located in the 10-kilometer zone. The 10-kilometer zone has 30 trenches that are intended to bury solid and non-combustible waste that will last for almost 300 years. Slightly or moderately contaminated machines were disposed of or cut for scrap. Some data shows that there's not only 1,145 containers with radioactive waste buried down under, there are also some very hazardous pieces of equipment. Number 5. Volkov Air Defense Missile System. This place is rarely visited by tourists since there isn't a single road that leads to the small military unit in the thickest of woods. It's located within the 10-kilometer exclusion zone. The top-secret location was put into work in 1962. It served for the air attack of the Chernobyl NPP. There's very little information in the public domain. Volkov is known to hit targets that are moving at 1,230 miles per hour, and it's used on a number of countries. The remains of the barracks, the transport, the garages, the missile bunker, platforms for missile systems and air raid shelters still remain in the territory of the abandoned unit. Some of the equipment was abandoned and evacuated immediately after the accident. The Volkov system was also the prototype for the Jupiter Plant Vicinity Stalker computer game. Number 4. Medical Sanitary Unit number 126 in Pripyat. The first people to be injured were brought to this unit 3 hours after the explosion at the 4th Power Unit. 6 firefighters and 22 nuclear power employees stayed in the medical unit for less than a day before they were transferred to Kiev, then a radiological clinic in Moscow. The most grotesque place is not the abandoned operating room or the maternity ward, the small basement with a narrow corridor of 60 to 70 meters long and several rooms of 10 to 15 square meters. The contaminated clothes, footwear, bed linen of the first accident victims were thrown into those rooms. In the basement you'll find a firefighter's boot that emits extreme amounts of radioactivity. The medical unit is open to visitors, but the basement is out of bounds. This, however, does not keep out those looking for a quick adrenaline rush going to look for scary artifacts. The main entrance has been barricaded by sand, but this doesn't stop the trespassers. Number 3. The Pripyat Hotel. From the roof of this hotel you can clearly see that nature is fighting with the remnants of radiation. The dense vegetation gives Pripyat the 1980s look of a Soviet Union town. The hotel was built in 1970 for the guests of the town, as well as the visitors of the nuclear reactor. A community centre was built alongside an amusement park that never saw the light of day. Pripyat was also chosen to accommodate the command centre coordinating the operations of the helicopters as they rectified the accident's consequences. The building was abandoned and the roof remains as a perfect place for a vantage view. There's a birch tree there where the command center used to be, and it now acts as a symbol of the life being revived. Some of the furnishings can still be found. Additionally, there are famous Hiroshima shadow graffiti painted on the building itself. Tourists are no longer permitted to enter the building. Number 2. The Amusement Park. This one has become an iconic place for tourists with broken swing boats, rusty Ferris wheel, cars that are overgrown with moss, and merry-go-rounds. The landscape makes it really post-apocalyptic and popular with the visitors. The amusement park is, however, under the risk of closure. The authorities suspect the structure might close. Residents of Pripyat never got to fully enjoy the park, since when it was set to be opened, things didn't go as planned. The amusement park was set to open on May 1st, 1986. Then the Chernobyl accident happened on April 26th, a mere 4 days to the opening date. And number 1, the Elephant's Foot. The thermal explosion of the Chernobyl nuclear power plant raised the temperatures to 2,700 degrees Celsius. The happenings inside the burning reactor can only be seen in post-apocalyptic movies. The scorching lava burned through everything in its path. The lava moved at a speed of 30 centimeters per hour. The river flowed out of the reactor cavity into the sub-reactor room 305. The metal structures, concrete and graphite were absorbed as the flow followed corridor 217 all the way to the suppression pool. Here, the lava streamed down the wall, forming a bizarre mass that froze forever. The barrel was nicknamed the Elephant's Foot because of its shape. It's believed it'll emit a lot of radiation for many years to come. Thank you for watching, and if you enjoyed the video, please let me know by clicking the like button. Do share, write a comment, and don't forget to subscribe so that you can catch up my next video.